Hi guys, my name is Maria Park and this is Approach the Nerd. And right now, my first official live stream, I am here with my friend Joe, who's going to introduce himself and talk about his channel. But we are talking about Power Rangers versus basically Samurai Sentai Shinkenger, which is a very cool show. Both of them were cool, but we're going to compare them and probably trash talk a little bit. We'll see. But yeah, so Joe?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Oh wait. Okay, it's kind of muffled. Let's go ahead and take this off, shall we? Hey, there we go. We can actually breathe a little bit. There we go.
I love how you strategically got the hat on at the same time. That's awesome.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yep. So my name is Joe. I run a channel called Joe's Geek Show. My primary focus is I talk about comic books. So since, from time to time, I do talk about Power Rangers comics too, because I'm a really big Power Rangers fan, because Boom Studio is running, without a doubt, the greatest Power Rangers comic run ever, I would say. So, anytime I do get a chance to come onto, someone else's channel and talk about Power Rangers, I am definitely very excited about that.
And of course, Super Sentai, where it all began.
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking about, we're basically comparing the two shows. So we and you are both in agreement that both series almost parallel or exactly the same.
Absolutely.
Obviously slightly different because one's set in the States, or their version of America. We're going to call it alternate America. And then one, of course, is set in Japan. Mm-hmm. So I guess we should start with the differences. What are the things that you've noticed that are different between the two series?
Well, I mean, so when it comes to a lot of the differences that I've noticed, a lot of it has to, be, of course, the adaptation of certain elements, like, say, the difference between the Morpher and the Henshin devices. So, like, in Samurai Sentai Shinkenger, the Henshin devices, were more like, like the brushes that are used for, like, kanji and hiragana and stuff like that, as they make the symbols for, like, morphing or making their Zords bigger and stuff like that. Whereas in the American version, they, I guess, Americanized it to a point because, a lot of audiences, kids specifically that are watching this, don't understand the Japanese culture. So they would probably be lost in the whole brushstroke version of it. So they kind of changed like the meaning, not so much the meaning of some of the symbols, but like, how the symbols are like pronounced, where they call them like, power symbols and whatnot. Also, the morphers themselves, they pretty much changed it. Whereas before in the Japanese one, it opened up and then it flipped down so that the brush could come out. Whereas this one, it just, opens up and that's as far as it goes. More of like, when they're doing the strokes, it's more like, I guess you could say laser focused or something like that. So, it's definitely certain things like that, like within the weapons and whatnot. And then, when they try to adapt some of the stories, they definitely take an approach of, how can we Americanize it so that the audiences understand it? How do we take out as much of the Japanese elements as possible? Which, we'll get into that too in a little bit, which is, honestly, where unfortunately a lot of the shortcomings from the show will end up coming from, is the removal of, elements within such a heavily Japanese influenced show in terms of like Shinkenger, I mean, as far as the culture goes, I mean, it's just drowned in Japanese culture. So it was definitely interesting to see them try and adapt that. But yeah, I mean, it's just certain things like that, some things are small, some things are big, but ultimately, it is what it is. We got what we got.
Yeah, we got what we got. I like that. Well, I noticed that if you look at the plot, right? So Power Rangers Samurai basically is descendants of samurais who are trying to prevent, I believe theirs were called Nylox, and it was Master Vandrid was their main villain. And they were trying to prevent them from flooding the basically Sanju River waters all over Earth, pretty much destroying civilization, which is basically the exact same plot for Shinkenger.
Parallel.
It's like they were like, oh, what are you doing trying to fight? Only they were called the Gedoshu was the name of theirs. So there was Gedoshu, and their master was Dokaku, I think it was. Yeah, it's like we call them Master Dokaku, but that was the name of that was their Master Vandrid, basically. But it's verbatim the same flipping plot. And to me, it was strange only because the Sanji River specifically, that's definitely more of a Japanese mythology, but our characters are actually supposed to be in the States.
Right.
So like the entire generations of samurai never made sense to me, because how are these people, who are none of them, not even the Pink Ranger, who was an Asian American but is actually Korean American, how are they descended from these Japanese, samurai? We're talking Bushido stuff here. That makes no sense. Every one of those original Power Ranger samurai, like their great-great-grandfather, whatever, would have had to have left Japan and basically married someone from each of these respective cultures to have them. So it's just very strange to me that they had this lineage to a country that they're not from. So what do you think about that?
I mean, it's definitely really strange. I mean, at a first glance, because especially when I think that as far as a story approach could have actually worked a little bit if they had actually maybe put a little more thought into it, instead of just saying, they're from the samurai family, like, that's just that. Because when you think about, like, say back in World War II, because I studied martial arts and whatnot, and one of the things I learned about the history of when of Japanese karate moving from east to west, it was American GIs that were stationed in Japan and stuff, like actually trained and studied over there, and then brought it back to the US in order to open up schools. And then of course you had immigration of Japanese people coming to America that just wanted to escape the conflict, escape the war. And I'm not saying you had to go that heavy in a Power Ranger show, but maybe something of that nature where you could have had, these Japanese people, immigrate to the US to continue their traditions. Maybe they did it in secret. They are going to raise the next generation of Power Ranger samurai there in the US. So that, when the evil returns, they're more prepared, because maybe say in Japan, they couldn't do it for some reason or another. But yeah, it was just such I thought it was handled very oddly, just to have them, also have the opening of the show where they're telling the history of the Power Ranger samurai with the actual Sentai footage. And so, like, it's the Japanese people, it's everything you can imagine about it, which I just thought was extremely weird.
Yeah, it's crazy, actually. I kind of felt like, and it's really cool that you did martial arts. I did Taekwondo, ATA. But what's really interesting is that I had a theory when we first saw the trailer for this show, for Power Rangers adaptation for Samurai. I thought, okay, well, maybe it would have made sense, or maybe they're going to do this thing where, okay, yeah, these are the next in line samurai, but maybe their grandfather aided the original Shinkenger in some way. And since that team are, the Power Ranger samurais in that way, and since they, were basically getting killed, they passed the power on to the people that were helping them. And then they took it to the States. And then that's why we have all these different nationalities. So like in some way, they all came across them. Kind of like if you remember old school Zeo, when they all got their Zeo crystals, but they got it through other ways or other people, or like mission, like when they were children. I thought it'd be something cool like that. It's like, well, the Red Ranger probably, Jaden's family maybe aided them in some way, or maybe when the Red Ranger was hurt, he ended up with some Englishman and he took him in and he nursed him back to health. And, he's like, I don't have children of my own, so I'm going to give this to you because you have a son, and blah, blah, blah. I would be okay with that.
It would have been something at least, instead of just dropping off the whole, like, we came from a family of samurai. It's like, well, how far back does that go exactly?
Exactly. And when I remember in the TV show, there are always like animosity between the Rangers at first, especially I believe it was with Kevin, the Blue Ranger, and Antonio, because he wasn't a real descendant. I know there was like a lot of like, kind of like superiority the Blue Ranger was showing, like, I'm a descendant from this samurai family. And I just wanted to be like, how? How are you putting Antonio down for having a cell phone power? And you're saying you're a descendant, but you're not Japanese. I'm so confused. So yeah, I have a lot of questions about that. And then we have a lot of comparisons too. Like, I know Dayu was the same. And
she was relatively the same. Yeah,
she was relatively the same. They changed the name. Hold on, what was his name? Decker. Decker was actually
Juyo.
Well, yeah, Juyo. Yeah, was it? It was Juyo in Japan, Decker
Mm-hmm.
in America, and I think what's his name? Richard Medina, not Gal Red. I got Gal Ranger equivalent. Wild Force,
Wild Force
Red
Ranger Red. Yep.
was his. Yeah, he played Decker. I thought that was a pretty cool transition. I just think that he started hating the Red Ranger a lot quicker in the American version than they did in Japan. In Japan, it was more like a mutual respect. And then at first, and when you first see him in Power Ranger Samurai, he's kind of like, "You have a sword. I don't like you." Like in general, I haven't even seen you fight. I just hate your guts. So I just thought that the way they built that up, they tried to go on the same path, but the way they kind of differentiated it made it a little silly in my mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also when you like look at the Power Ranger Samurai versus the Power Ranger Samurai versus the Shinkenger and stuff like that. I mean, one advantage that Shinkenger definitely has more episodes. So they obviously they could dedicate more time to that story, which is where I think, especially Power Rangers today, tends to fall short, especially the way that Nickelodeon's got it set up. Ever since Power Rangers Samurai came in to start the Neo Saban era, I did not like the way they did that, especially whenever they were just like, hey, you got Power Rangers Samurai for 20 episodes, now you get Super Samurai for 20 episodes, and like the hiatus between each series.
It doesn't make sense. And unfortunately, even though that Hasbro has what is it? What is the equivalent? It's airing right now. Why am I forgetting?
Power Rangers Beast Morphers.
Beast Morphers, thank you. How they're doing Beast Morphers is just wrong. It's very wrong. Like, not only do they have that space between the regular and the super version of the show, they'll play 4 episodes and then it can be like 2 or 3 weeks and you get nothing but repeats, and then it comes back with 2 episodes. This is the longest season I've ever seen in Power Rangers because of Nickelodeon. It's weird.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, on Netflix, not to get off track, but even on Netflix with Power Rangers Beast Morphers, when the first 10 episodes are done, they put them on Netflix before the season's even finished.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe it should just be on Netflix. I mean, honestly, I know for public channels you don't have.
I mean, Netflix and Nickelodeon recently made a deal, so it is quite possible we could see that transition.
Yeah, and I think that they would do well to have it on YouTube as well. Like maybe Nickelodeon has its own Power Ranger streaming site online, because to me, it just would make more sense than waiting 2 years to see episode 5. Like, I'm just saying, but yeah.
Okay,
that's a little off topic, but
okay. Back on track.
Okay, so power symbols. You brought that up, so that goes back to my original point. I'm sure you understand. They call it power symbols, but it's an actual part of the Japanese alphabet. It is kanji, so it's like. Does that mean, and hear me out, does that mean anybody can grab one of their device or their their morphers, and just, if they know Japanese kanji, they can just write whatever and it'll come true? Because, obviously these power symbols are not what we consider kanji, but it's an actual language. So grandma's sitting in the park and wants water. She grabs, like Jaden's morpher and just writes the kanji for water. Will it appear? I'm confused. I really want to know.
Well, also, even if you look at it from that angle, like, do you even really need to know the Japanese kanji language? Because all you gotta do is take a picture of their helmets.
Oh yeah, and then broadcast it. You're right.
Because all their helmets, they have the symbols on there.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's interesting, especially since now the one thing they did do, if we're talking about characters, the characterization between the Japanese and the American actors are very, very similar. Like Jaden's a stoic guy. He's very stoic, always hiding something, just like Takaru, which we know. I hope we're not spoiling it, but come on, guys. This is already...
Oh, yeah. Well, both Power Rangers Samurai was like 2012, 2011, and then
2011, I think, right?
It was like 2011, 2012. Yeah. I just gotten into the army when that show dropped, and then
well, no, it's earlier than that, because wasn't Gokaiger 2011? Yeah. It's got to be 2010, 2009, or 2010. I could have sworn. Yes,
for Shinkenger. Shinkenger was first.
And I'm pretty certain 2011. We'll keep talking. I'm gonna check my facts with my
because when it came to Power Rangers RPM, that was the last of the Disney series, and then there were so many years that we went with. It was like a year or two that we went without Power Rangers because Disney just redid the first season of Power Rangers again.
Yeah, because I know that Shinkenger I thought came out in 2010, so maybe it was the year after. You might be right because we had a gap when they weren't doing it anymore. So let me make sure because I don't talk about Megaforce. That's the show that shall not be spoken about.
We don't need to talk about that.
Talk about that.
And that was the Legacy season.
I don't know what legacy they were looking at, but that's fine. Let's see that. Yeah, you're right. It was 2011, so they actually did it right the year after it aired in Japan, which is pretty good actually. So then that means 2012. Yeah, I'm trying to get that right in my head. So 2012 was that RPM? Or was RPM before? No, RPM was the last one they did before.
Yeah, RPM was the last of the Disney era. It was about 2009 or 2010 when RPM. Actually, I think it was 2009 because in 2010 was when Disney re-aired the original series with the updated weird graphics and.
Yeah, they did because I think the three previous ones to that was Operation Overdrive, Mystic Force, and Ninja Storm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, those are the other Disney shows. Okay. I had to get that right in my head. So you got to be accurate in your brain. So I guess my main question is like with the shows, because they're so parallel, I'm always looking for things that differentiate them. Like we already know that they're in the States. The characterizations are definitely similar. Like I said with Jaden is, in all intents and purposes, he is a lot like Takaru. He acts like that. He doesn't talk to his team. He's very secretive. Mia is kind of like Mako, only I think Mako had a little bit more sense than Mia did. But again, Mako is kind of like the big sister, the terrible cook, very studious, basically wants to be the Pink Ranger, but also wants to be able to travel the world and learn how to cook and be a chef and blah, blah, blah. But Mako was more like, you learn later on in Shinkenger that she felt abandoned by her mother because her mother was the original Pink Ranger and she was paralyzed during a fight. So she was very, there was nothing else, I guess is what I'm saying. Her grandmother raised her to be her mother's replacement. And she felt like because her father and mother moved away to Hawaii, they abandoned her. And that's just all she was going to be, was the Pink Ranger, the new Pink Samurai Ranger. So a little bit different. Mia just seemed a little bit more willing. Like there was nobody in her family saying, go do it. She's like, cool. I was waiting for you. No, so that was cool. Emily, they kept the storyline with Kotaha because Kotaha's sister was sick. And so Kotaha was the replacement. And so was Emily. And they make it seem like Emily was raised in a trailer park. I'm just saying, she was like talking about chopping down weeds. I don't know if she was on a farm. Like, I guess Kotaha was supposed to be from the country in Japan. Yeah. So maybe Emily's the equivalent, but it's just that I just couldn't get over that.
Because when you talk about the differences and stuff like that, that during some of the characterizations and times when we get to know them, that's where like the differences came in. For example, the first time that we meet Mako versus I just lost it, Pink Ranger.
Mia or
Mia?
Mako,
yes.
Mako is the Pink Ranger. So Kotaha is the Yellow Ranger, and Emily is the Yellow Ranger. Which color?
The pink. Yes. So the first time we meet Mako versus Mia. And stuff like that. That was actually one of the differences. Like in the first episode, Mako, obviously they were both rich, but Mako was getting carried in the little carriage.
Yeah. Well, she was also volunteering. She was a daycare attendant. Remember?
Yeah.
She was playing with the kids, and then they all they shoot the arrows out.
And they shoot the arrow.
Messages. And so then she gets carried on the I knew the Japanese name and I forgot it, but yeah, and we'll call it the transporter that everyone's carrying.
She got carried off in that, whereas Mia was in a limousine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then of course, obviously the biggest difference between Ryunosuke and his American counterpart was that Kevin was training to be Ryunosuke was training to be a kabuki guy for his family tradition, whereas Kevin wanted to be a swimmer in the Olympics.
Yep. And he actually qualified, and he was on a team that got mad because he was leaving to become the Blue Ranger, but they didn't know that. So they just figured abandoning them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I honestly thought that the difference between Kevin and Rinosuke in terms of their character introductions was really interesting. That they were able to actually say, okay, the Kabuki might be too Japanese, so let's do some kind of American thing, And at first I thought they were going to do like an American. At first I thought they might have done like an American equivalent with him wanting to do some kind of dance or something like that. You know, so the Olympics was definitely an interesting choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that so we had the Green Ranger, so we had Chucky and hold on, Mike. So Mike and him are almost the same. They're both gamers that did not take anything seriously. So I think they did a really good job with them. It's almost like him and Emily are probably the closest to the counterparts in Japan. Yeah. Jaden's a little bit, but because he got the stokeness, but he's still not. Tucker came up as like a butthole sometimes. He's just like, I have stop talking to me. I'm just a samurai. But yeah, those two were very, very close. And like I said, with the villains now Master Vandred does not act like Dakaku. It was more like he was more of the talkative kind, and Dokaku is more like, I order you to do this, go do it, and get out of my face type. So, but again, for American voiceovers, since I do them, I do know that they try to make it more equivalent to an American audience, so that kind of makes sense, especially since it's a children's show. Even though a lot of adults watch it,
Actually, I think probably more adults watch it at this point.
They really do. Just like Jungle Fury. Oh, Jungle Fury is another Disney one, wasn't it? Jungle Fury.
Yep.
Yeah, if you look at them, to me, Jungle Fury, which is another heavily martial arts themed Power Ranger store, which is Geki Ranger, they did a really good job with their villains because they made them more adult. Like Jared was trying to kill you. Jared wasn't pretending. He was like, no, he was trying to kill you. And Samurai was almost like, I could kill you. I could hold you down and stab you to death right now, but I'm going to just sit here and wait for somebody else to beat you up and destroy you. And it was like, were they really trying? It's like my running joke. Remember old school with the Green Ranger with Tommy? And there's like an episode where they're fighting putties and like they're holding him down to take these scissors and cut off a lock of his hair. And I'm like, why don't you just stab him to death? Like you can just stab him and it's KO. Why are you making a clone to kill him? That just
I mean, that's what you get with a kid show, though.
I know. Back then it was believable, but now it's like I totally could have taken the Power Rangers out like 7 times already in the first season.
As an adult, you definitely do notice it, which is as a quick aside, one of the things that I love about the comic books is that whenever the villains don't have that obvious opportunity, they actually explain that there's a reason for that.
Yeah, they do. Which I get. But I guess with Power Ranger Samurai, the villains, they like besides Decker and Dayu, all of the other villains are the villains of the week. Just seemed really idiotic, like extremely idiotic. Like there are times where it's like they always make fun of this in like anime and other shows where people are like transforming and the villains are just standing by, like, okay, we'll give you a minute to get your stuff together. And it's like there's so many times that just could have attacked them and they don't. So I just thought that was interesting. But yeah, so villains aside, what about the Zords? The Zords are pretty much the same.
I mean,
how they get the Zords.
Yeah, that's pretty identical.
Yeah. I know the super armor though is different. Like they have armor that they get that's not in Shinkenger, which was interesting.
Yeah. In the Saban era, that's one thing they definitely pushed. Was like, changing the cockpit of the Megazord and stuff like that and giving them like a special armor and stuff. I'm not sure why they would want to use the Sentai footage for that, but
maybe they just wanted to do something original because I mean they even used their own power symbols. They actually did a very complicated, kanji for that. And I kept thinking, wow, they actually researched that or to be able to form that. And they never really translated what it meant. It was just like, I guess it means get bigger. I don't know. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting that they did their own little shots. And if they were going to do that, I mean, why not have more, out of costume and costume fights? But they didn't really do as many. So I don't know. They did some, but not really as many. So yeah, but I did notice that was another difference. Bulk and Skull, Bulk and Skull's son.
Yeah, Bulk and Spike.
What was his name?
Spike.
Spike? Thank you. Bulk and Spike. So that's an added element. We didn't have anything like that in Shinkenger, which is that good or bad? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, I will say it was nice to see Bulk come back, you know, and it would have been nice if Skull came back too for the season. But
I thought didn't he come back for like a guest appearance? I thought he did come back, and he was like super rich.
Yeah, he did come back for like a quick second, you know,
yeah.
but not really enough, you know, for me to really consider him there, I guess you could say. You know, because like when it came to Spike always just felt like, you know, he was just that cheap imitation of Skull, you know. So it was really, you know, it was kind of sad that, you know, the actor for Skull didn't decide not to come back, or I don't know exactly what happened, whether he didn't decide to come back or they just didn't offer him enough, you know. But it was cool to see Bulk back at least. But even though ultimately that storyline didn't really go anywhere. I mean, it was one of those things where he was clearly back for fan service, but then, you know, his overall inclusion in the story just didn't, you know, it didn't really go anywhere. I mean, when you look at the original Power Rangers, you know, Bulk and Skull actually served a purpose and actually had a multiple character arc all the way through in space, you know. And when you know, he was in here, I thought maybe we were going to kind of get something like that going again, but you know, he was just, like I said, that was fan service.
Yeah, plus I always wondered what happened with Bulk in a way, because like when we saw him in Power Rangers in Space, he was in the police academy with Skull.
Yep.
But then it seemed like Skull went off and did his own thing, became like super rich. And Bulk's just like, I'm just gonna move to, where were they? Were they in Turtle Bay? I'm trying to remember the name of where they were. Was it Turtle Bay?
Oh my God. It's been a minute since I picked Samurai. Well, see, and that was a lot of the problem with Samurai, is it was primarily forgettable for the most part.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. Well, wherever they were, I was curious why Bulk, like, they didn't say, hey, what happened? How did you fail at the academy? Why did you move all the way from Angel Grove to this place? You know, because they were all like pro Angel Grove, like but to be fair, everything happened in Angel Grove at the time. In the original Power Rangers run, nowhere else got attacked. It was just Angel Grove. So if you moved away, you were fine. If you went to Stone Canyon or one of the other towns they mentioned or name dropped, it seems like everything's fine. But if you lived in the Angel Grove, which is probably like 2 miles long, then you were just gonna die. You know, it was really, really weird. But I just want to know why Bulk just decided to leave, because he stuck it in there for like the long run. He went through multiple Earth invasions, and then he just like, I'm gonna move over here where I'm gonna be put in danger again with this other new town. You know, it's just very strange.
Or even the one question that I've always wanted answered, and like it's I guess it's never been answered as far as I know. It was how Bulk even got back to Earth in the first place, because he was on Terra Venture and Lost Galaxy, but then we see him in Wild Forest and he's running a business with Skull.
Which maybe that's how Skull made his money, and maybe that's how they fell out. Maybe he left to get away from Skull, because Skull's like a millionaire now, and maybe he, I don't know, bought him out, got rid of his partners. It's such a weird, it's a good thing that I think I theorize more about what happened with Bulk than I do with all of Samurai.
Yeah.
But yeah. But yeah, that's a good. I want to know what's up with that. Like, why? And then why did Skull think to send his son to Bulk to learn from him when he's the one that's successful?
I know, especially when Spike stepped off the bus. We know from the get-go that Bulk was going to teach him the ways of the samurai. And it's just like, what are your qualifications?
Seriously. I mean, Antonio's doing better than you. But yeah, it's just very strange. I didn't understand that. And are they crushed? They kind of did like the Phantom Ranger, Pink Ranger thing with what was it, Samurai Pink and Spike, where he instantly had a crush on her and never saw her before. Yeah, that was interesting. Which one day we're going to have to talk about the Phantom Ranger. I'm not letting that go. Like, even today, it bothers me that we never got to see who the Phantom Ranger really was. But that's off topic. So yeah, so Bulk and Skull, that's another one. I remember, and I'm trying to remember who it was in Shinkenger. Master G was their master in Samurai. I cannot remember. What was his name? Oh, I can't remember the Takaru's.
The mentor's name?
The handler. Yeah, what was his name?
Oh,
They went out of, it's been such a long time since I've seen. But I just remember him, and he was so, into custom, and this is the samurai way, and you could tell he would take a sword. Master G was kind of more like that Mr. Miyagi type. There's definitely a difference in personality. You got like Mr. Miyagi. Well, I'm not knocking Mr. Miyagi. Mr. Miyagi is cool, but it definitely had more of his personality versus the I am the guy who holds the secrets, who will die without telling you a thing, like kind of personality, very extreme, which I thought was interesting. Like he was one of the first ones that was telling Genta, no, you're not a samurai. You weren't born a samurai. You're gonna be a samurai. Nope. There's a door.
Yeah. Which, if I remember correctly, that was like another stark difference between Samurai and Shinkenger, was that in Shinkenger they actually had like a special type of magic that they used to fuel their power, and then like they said that Genta's was like synthesized; it wasn't real, like he created it. Whereas in Samurai, if I remember, there was nothing like that. They could just use the symbols, and as long as they knew them.
Yeah, like I know that Antonio had the cell phone, and like they used the disc to charge something, but I guess in both versions I have questions. Like, why were these two, one a sushi chef, one a fisher? I call him a fisherman / like street cook. I don't know. Why were both of these people intelligent enough to create their own morphers with all these abilities? You know what I mean? Where's their science degree? I'm really confused, because we've seen throughout the past generations of Power Rangers that you have to be pretty freaking smart to come up to be able to tap into the morphing grid in any capacity.
Yeah, definitely.
What happened? I'm just really curious. But yeah, I don't know about, I'm trying to think, did Antonio, because I remember he had the cell phone. I just don't remember. I can't remember if Power Ranger Samurai, if he had the phone first and changed, or if Master G gave it to him.
Well, he created it. He showed up as Shiken Gold. In Samurai, or sorry, not Samurai, in Shinkenger, he showed up because there was that running joke where when anyone saw him, he'd run away when he recognized one of the Rangers, and then he got what was it? He created his morpher. He introduced himself. Then when Takaru brought him back, the mentor character from both seasons takes the morpher away from him temporarily, saying, you're not part of this legacy. Your family's not, retainers or rangers or anything like that. So, we're not going to let you do this kind of deal. And of course, at which point in both shows, I was just kind of like, but he made that. You just stole his property.
Yeah. Here's my lawyer.
Well, then also I was thinking, like, wait a second too. Who cares if you take it? Can you just make another one?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you're right. I mean, I have the technology, obviously. I am a cook that can develop really high tech, weaponry on the side. It's just a hobby.
Yeah, but that was always, but that was the story element where he showed up, he had it, but then he got taken away until he like proved himself.
Well, then also the play off of that, I always thought that his powers were better. So it's almost like maybe you should let him give everybody synthesized powers, because they were stronger than what the samurai actually had. So, I mean, maybe you've been doing it wrong. Maybe the old ways aren't working. Maybe we need a synthesized samurai team. But pop out the cell phone. Maybe it's a downloadable app. I don't know. but yeah.
It's quite possible.
Yeah. And I thought it's really, really cool that he was able to come up with all that. But I mean, quite frankly, the Gold Ranger was pretty badass. So.
Oh yeah, well, at least until he fell to the sixth Ranger sort of thing, where it's like they're super uber powerful at first, but then once they're actually part of the team, then they're no better than the rest of them. And then every time a sixth Ranger comes in, he's like super powerful and joins the team, suddenly they're having issues again with the bad guy, and I'm just, man, you were better off alone.
Yeah, I know that. I know that Goki, I think his name is Goki, the Green Ranger in Zoo Ranger, was the only exception to that rule. But I do know that in Maji,
in Zoo Ranger?
In Zoo Ranger, yeah.
Burai.
Burai. He was
the Red Ranger.
Yeah, they were brothers. I think that he is the exception, because I mean, when I did a video with Blur Without Fear about this. We were talking when he shows up to to the party, it is you just it's time to go. But no, like a good example of that is Maji Ranger. Whenever Maji Shine shows up, it's so badass, and like that very first intro, and then he gets his butt kicked every time from that point on.
Yep.
and you're supposed to be a god. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, no, it never made sense. Like, I mean, I get that you have to kind of restore the balance so that they're not too powerful. And that, like, that's the initial intention for making them so powerful at first, is just to say, hey, it's a new Ranger. Isn't this cool? Buy his toys. That is just
for 1 week, because he's not going to be good next week.
Like, exactly. back to normal. You're like everybody else now.
He gets one shot, so get in line. But no, that's a valid point. And I think Antonio was actually a little bit weaker than Gento was. Except for there was that one time, the big fight between Jaden and Decker where Antonio was holding his own, but outside of that, not so much. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the Power Rangers have to have the same law as Sentai because they use so much of the Japanese footage. The Sixth Ranger has to suck at some point. Which actually, though, Tommy didn't suck as much as everyone else. So the Green and White Ranger were pretty much end game too, in a way, in the show.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Even a Ghost Ager, the Kid White Ranger and stuff, he was pretty strong throughout the entire series after his introduction.
Yeah, which is, I mean, I guess it's kind of cool that they did that, but I think every Power Ranger show since, Gokaiger's different, but we're not talking about that show because the Gold Ranger, actually, a Silver Ranger did have a lot of, a lot more than the other Gokaigers, and his stuff was given to him through death, which is a good way, I guess, to get powers in the afterlife. You were grounded in Morpher. I'm like, is that what you do to become a Power Ranger now? But but now, so back to Samurai. So we talked about the characters, kinda, like we compared their similarities and some of their differences. Power structurally, though, they're all on point. I think the only one we didn't talk about was the add-on characters, which is a really big difference, and that is the female Red Ranger, which is Takaru's. Now, I don't remember if she was a cousin. Karu is either his cousin. I want to say she's a cousin because he's still in the Shiba. I want to say he's still in the Shiba family, and she does adopt him as a son. But I thought they were distant cousins or something like that, which kind of makes the adoption really incestual and weird. But I have to go and look at that. But so we had them. So just for the point of this video, I'm going to say they were cousins, but they may not have been related at all. He may have just been another, not really retainer, but another person in their their clan's son who was chosen to sub for her.
Right.
But of course, in Samurai, it was actually Jaden's older sister, Lauren, who was the actual Red Ranger and who was training and was better than him at fighting. So I don't know, but actually Karu was pretty much better than Takaru too. So
that was pretty accurate and stuff like that. Yeah. Also because Sentai footage, but
yep. But, well, I thought it was interesting too that they both kept the name Shiba. They're both the Shiba clan, which I have opinions on. I was like, how?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when Jonathan Zakor was on as producer and stuff at the time, like he's the one. I think he's one of the ones that like helped resurrect the Power Rangers show after Disney decided to can it. And I know he's a huge Sentai fan. For the most part, and I think that was his intention, was to try to say, okay, why can't we just do a complete adaptation and just Americanize it to a point, but still deliver almost the exact same show beat for beat. And then and apparently that's where the problem was.
Like, you're going to be the Shiba clan in America. You come from a long line of samurais with blonde hair. I don't understand that at all. To this day, it still bothers me, but they kept that name. So it was Shiba and Shiba on both ends. The only difference is when they would henshin in Shinkenger, they would say their names. And I really didn't look up the last names of the other Power Rangers. Do they have the same last names as their counterparts? I need to look that up. I want to see if that's actually a thing. Because I didn't think about that.
That would be weird.
That would be really weird. That'd be really weird. Let me see. I'm trying to see if it pulls up now to see if they actually had the same names, because that that would mean the originality in this is gone completely. They were just verbatim copying.
Oh yeah, no, there's definitely a difference between an homage and then a straight ripoff.
Yeah. Okay, so they did not. So like Mia's last name was Watanabe, which is a Japanese name. So I guess she was a Korean American actress portraying a Japanese American. Which okay. Then we had Mike Fernandez, Kevin Douglas, and Emily Stewart, and the Gold Ranger's name was Antonio Garcia. Very strong Japanese names.
Extremely strong.
Strong Japanese names. So then how does, and I'm just playing devil's advocate. We have a few Latina, Hispanic, names in here. How did that play off? Are they no longer able to use Spanish because they have to focus on power symbol Japanese? I mean,
yeah, definitely brings their education into a question. There's just like, how did that work for y'all? And then of course, then they look at Jaden and it's just like, your last name's what?
Where are you from? What part of Japan are you from? Like, it's a small island that no one knows about called Shiba Island.
Shiba Island.
Magic things happen there.
Or it could be just one of those, I'm from downtown San Francisco.
Well, that, or if they're from Japan, the magical Shiba Island is where all of the anime characters are based off of, just those people in Japan. Sure, Sailor Moon's blonde, Jaden's blonde. They're both Japanese, strong Japanese names. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. And I thought it was also interesting that both the sister in Power Ranger Samurai and Karu both gave up their right or their place as Red Ranger.
Yeah.
Which is verbatim what happened. I mean, they changed it up a little bit, but verbatim what happened in both shows. So essentially, it's almost like we're watching the exact same series. I'm like,
yeah, you're just watching one that's better than the other.
Yeah. True, when Sentai, especially the music. The music is always better in Sentai than it is in Power Rangers. Come at me! It is always better. Always better. They have like full soundtracks. Like they release multiple CDs and we get the same song that's morphed differently, but it's the same undertone theme as Go-Go Power Rangers was originally. Not a bad theme, but at this point, do something new. Or at least try to do something new. But
yeah, well, I mean, other seasons of Power Rangers, I'd say, especially after Zeo from like Space, actually even Turbo on up, were pretty interesting. Like I'd say. Yeah. Because like Zeo, I think was like one of the last ones in the Fox era to actually use the whole like the actual riff, like din, 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 din.
Yeah.
And then the Disney era was pretty original with most of their music too, I think.
That's true. Operation Overdrive and Mystic Force had really horrible theme songs. I didn't like them at all.
Yeah, what was really weird was the fact that when it came to Mystic Force, specifically, what was it? The guy who Ron Wasserman actually had a theme made for that one. Did you ever hear that?
No.
It was so much better. You could just search it up on YouTube sometime. Yeah, Ron Wasserman who made one for Mystic Force. And it was just so much better. And everybody just in the comment section too, you'll see, it'll just be like, why didn't they use this? Because they were trying to do like, the whole hip hop thing, which was really weird. I don't know what they were.
Operation Overdrive too. And I was like, what is happening here? I didn't understand who was choosing the music and how to get them fired. I'm like, because they don't need to be doing that anymore.
Yeah.
But I need to check that out because I was not really. I don't know what it was. It just was a really bad theme song. Both of them were, but Mystic Force was horrible, especially for a magical theme, show. You think it would be a lot better than that.
Oh God. Yeah. I don't know what was going on with whoever was on the show at the time, whatever producer was on the show. Well, actually, I think Jonathan Tacor was still as producer, but yeah, it was crazy when it comes to the music. But I'll tell you what, though, the Shinkenger theme is probably still to this day one of my favorite theme songs from a Sentai series.
Yeah, it's a dance riff. It's more like a dance riff.
Oh my God, yeah. So you just got that, like just from the opening, it's just so you know, it just gets you amped where it's just like, oh, chum bada bada, chum bada bada.
Yeah, actually, I think it's funny too because I think the same guy who produced that song did Deca Ranger. I know they rotate their music out, like their musical artists and the producers.
Yeah,
but
Psychic Lover did the Shinkenger, and they usually do. Yeah, they've done quite a few of the themes, and every time Psychic Lover does one of the themes, I'm all into it.
Oh yeah,
and then I can't remember his name, but the guy who did the Go Onjer theme also, like he was the same guy that also did Go Kaiger.
Okay, I have to look that up. I know Shura Sarumi is the one that did Gal Ranger, and he's been like one of their main singers, but he also composes. So they loved him. And he's older, so I don't know. I'll have to look into that because I want to say he wrote Time Ranger, but didn't sing that one. So, but I think they just use these like collective music groups that all work well with each other.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then you'll see some of the artists. Like I was very impressed that Deca Pink's actress, and I used to know her name, was actually on the Maji Ranger soundtrack. She was singing a lot of the female songs for Maji Ranger. So pretty cool. But back to Power Ranger Samurai. So the ending of Power Ranger Samurai. You remember the last episode?
No.
Okay, so this is another difference here. So at the end of the series, if you look at Shinkenger, Tucker is kind of left to figure out his life because, you know, the threat's gone. What do you do now? You're like over this team that's disbanding because they're going back to their normal lives because they're retainers and they're just done with you. So Mako goes to Hawaii to spend time with her mother and father. And you have Kota who's going home. Jackie going to and I speak Japanese. That's the sad part. Jackie is going to I think he was going to be with his father and to study to train more because he always felt like the weakest member of the team, which is something Mike always felt too in the equivalent Power Samurai. Of course, Ryosuke was going back to training to be a kabuki dancer. And then, you know, if you look at Power Ranger Samurai, so Mia decided to go and learn to be a cook by traveling the world, but then so did Antonio. Antonio was going to go open up restaurants. Same thing with Genta and Shinkenger. So we have 3 people going off to cook. You know, just that's what it was. It was very weird. Emily and Mike decided to go back to her house together, holding hands. I don't know what that's about. They're going to go shack up, I guess. I don't know. They're like, I'm like, when did that even become I mean, they kind of hinted to them liking each other, but when did that become an official thing where he's moving home with her? That's probably the most I've seen since Lightspeed. You remember Lightspeed Rescue and the Green Ranger?
Yeah, especially in the later seasons of Power Rangers, it became very much a, you know, we can hint at a relationship, we can maybe show something, but it's not going to go far, and it might ask you leaving a lot of questions, much like in RPM when Ziggy hooked up with Dr. K at the end.
Yeah,
and it was just like, wait, that was a thing. I mean, they had moments throughout the series, but nothing that really suggested romance. And like this was another occasion of that. And honestly, romances on Power Rangers are generally done so poorly. I don't know why they even bother half the time. You know, like even in what was it, Power Rangers Ninja Steel? You know, they actually did have 2 Rangers that were together. You know, they actually called themselves boyfriend girlfriend.
And Yellow, so that was oh, I forgot their names already. Another show, I guess it's going over my head.
I've always said that realistically, other than Dino Charge, the Neo Saban era for the most part is entirely forgettable.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, I thought it was weird because like if you look at the relationships, if we're going by the potential moments, then Mia and Jaden should have gotten together a lot faster than Emily and Mike should have.
Absolutely.
Because there were so many moments where it looked like they were flirting with each other. But the same thing about the Japanese equivalent. I thought Takeru and Mako were going to be married by the end of that show because she was all in his business, but they didn't do anything with that. But in Sentai, they tend to, but we don't normally see it. The one thing I liked about the show Go Kaiger is that we got to see like years later what happened to some of the previous team members, like if they're married or whatever, because we don't normally get to see that. But yeah, it was just really interesting that Emily and Mike were going back to her farm or trailer park or wherever she's going. I mean, she's supposed to be what, 18? I think he's about the same age, 18, 19. So her parents are just going to be like, okay, yeah, you're bringing this guy home. Like, yeah, he's probably another samurai, retainer, whatever. But you're 18 and you're bringing him home to the farm to check up.
Well, I mean, who knows? Maybe they follow the ancient Japanese traditions of what is that? Arranged marriages, maybe? Maybe it was like, you have to bring him back. The next generation must be trained, and we got to keep it all in the family, man.
Yeah, we got to make sure he can pull those weeds. Like, it's horrible. But so yeah, I'm trying to think of more things that are different. It's hard because I swear it's like there's so many similarities. It's almost like watching I won't say generic version, but off-brand version.
They're extremely parallel. I mean, even from the very first episode, the introduction of Takaru and the introduction of Jaden are exactly the same. Like, this is what we've had other seasons of Power Rangers before that have shared storylines, but then at a lot of other points have still taken their own route. Here, we quite literally have almost a shot-for-shot remake of Shinkenger, which again, definitely showed, not just, of course, through the footage, but also, in some of the stories where the stories were, again, so had that more Japanese culture base. But they tried to Americanize it, and ended up falling short because of that.
Yeah. And then also, even with some of the villains, like we were talking about Decker. So if I remember correctly, his equivalent,
Gio,
he was like a really like prodigy, like type Bushido, swordsman who got ill and then he went into the Sons of River and it made him half Gindoshu. I don't remember if that was Decker's story or because I remember Dayu, like in his flashbacks, I thought Dayu was his fiance and like what was it? I think maybe that was how it was in Shinkenger too. I remember her like
I think that was I think that was pretty similar too, for the most part. I don't remember much difference in that story.
Okay, so let's think about this. So Dayu in the American version, I don't think Dayu killed his fiance.
No.
But I think in Japan, she was the jealous. Yeah, she killed his fiance. And so that cursed her. And he, like, if I remember correctly, and she had like this, didn't she have like a guitar or something that she would play? And it was really the guy. Yeah. So maybe it wasn't Decker or Japanese equivalent Decker's fiance. Maybe it was somebody that she was obsessed with and she turned him into an instrument and then killed the fiance.
Yeah, I think it was something like I remember. Wait, if I remember, it was like it's been a minute. I almost remember the fiance being the instrument.
Maybe that's what it is, and that's why he was that's why he protected her and kept her around. It wasn't he was protecting Dayu? He was trying to get his fiance back. It was something along the lines, and then like
something like that. Yeah.
And the American version, though, I don't know if that was similar or she actually was into him and he started liking her. It was so weird. Like even when the villains get together, it's just very weird. Outside of Scorpiona and Goldar, who were really a couple in Zyuranger. I don't understand when the villains get together. It's just so random. It's almost like how Rita and Zed got together. It's just like, really, you just decided that was going to be your husband. And after all these years, he never broke the love spell. They even had a kid together, and like it's just so strange.
Well, the wonderful producers at Fox were the ones responsible for that particular relationship, and actually, they did remove the love spell from them. At some point, because I recently watched. It was in season. I think it was like at the beginning of season 3, or it was somewhere along there. Because what was it? What was it? Zed wanted to have a baby or something like that, and Rita wanted to like remove the spell to kind of like get his mind off that, if I recall correctly. And then. It was something along those lines. It was either that story or it was one of those where Finster and the other monsters, like Goldar or something, made an antidote to give to Zed. I'm trying to remember how that went, but I remember they did remove the spell from him, and then after it was done, Zed still wanted to be with Rita, and then it was like Goldar or Finster or someone was just like, oh, I guess Zed really does love her, because there was, there was obviously, I remember there was back in the 90s, there was a bit of an issue going on with like some of the parents, writing to Fox saying, she achieved her man through mind control, basically. So there was questions about Power Rangers forced relationships going on. There's some. Count on the villains. It's like, it's got there's a moral quandary.
They can try to kill people. That's fine, but we're not going to have forced relationships in this show.
So they removed the spell to completely solidify them as a couple, and then to maybe even call into question if the love potion even worked in the first place. It's definitely a very weird. It was definitely a very odd story.
And see, like in Samurai and Shinkenger, that's the one thing I can say that happens in both series, is that the way they handle certain relationships is just odd. It's just really odd. Just like the people you think are going to get together. And I'm not watching, Sentai or Power Rangers for that, but they put it out there. And like you see it, it's like, oh, they're totally a couple. And then like you see them later, like, oh, they don't even like each other. Or nothing really comes of it. Like Ginga Man, Saya, and Hyuga, she was, oh, every day, Hyuga. But by the end of it, it was like, yeah, Hyuga went over there and did his thing. I came over here and did my thing. And then we just moved on with our lives, So it's just really weird. Like they don't ever like make a commitment. So maybe every Ranger, both Sentai, has commitment phobia. Still to this day, the only convincing relationship was Kimberly and Tommy, I would say, because they actually kissed and went on dates. Like they were the only convincing one. Like, when it came to Time Force, like Jen and Wes did have me convinced that they were into each other. But at the same time, I was just like, kiss her, you fool. You're never going to see her again. But it never happens. We can have relationships. We just can't see any intimacy, which again, always makes me just be like, why is it there? Why do you have to have it? Like even in Sentai, it's like sometimes the relationships are just so, half done, where it's like it feels like sometimes it's there maybe just for the little girl that watches the show. I don't know, to kind of be like, oh, I ship these two characters. Well, remember Time Ranger? The Yellow Ranger actually got his girlfriend pregnant because when he went to the future, she had the baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, when did that happen? Like, when did they get together? I'm so really confused. All of a sudden, she's pregnant. I'm like, huh?
It was during the title sequence.
Is that what it is? Or ending credits? They took a long time. But no, so like with Samurai, I just thought that like the conclusions to everybody's story was just kind of lackluster. Everybody just kind of walked off, and Jaden just kind of sitting there, like he's like, "What are you gonna do?" And it's like, meh. But to be fair, Shinkenger had a more emotional ending because when everybody was leaving, and you saw Ryunosuke doing a dance to honor him, Takeru, like in the background, and they're each going back to their lives. They went slowly, but the end of Power Ranger Samurai, they're all like, peace out, we're out, bye. And they just like walk away. And I'm like, that was it.
Yeah. And again, I don't know. I think just that has a lot to do with, a more emotional connection to the characters, because again, that's one, like I said, was one of the biggest differences between, how America does its shows and Japan does its shows, where when Japan starts the Sentai series, it's running the entire year. You have a whole year's worth of content and episodes to get to really love these characters. Whereas, again, here in the US, it's like Power Rangers nowadays, 10 episodes, three to 5 month hiatus, 10 episodes. Okay, see you next year for a new season of this version of Power Rangers, which really is actually just the conclusion to the entire story. Which again, I'm just like, come on. It's like, can you stop doing that? And I was hoping when Hasbro took over, but apparently it was Nickelodeon that mandated it like that. I don't know why. I'm just like, I long for the days, of early Power Rangers where it was a Saturday morning cartoon show and you got it for a nice solid, however many episodes it was, like 35, 40, less, 35. Something like that. Yeah, because as it went on, they got shorter and shorter and shorter. Because that first season of Power Rangers was a weekday show.
Yeah,
I
it was
remember.
every day after school at 3:30.
Yeah,
Yep.
that sucker came on daily. You know, there was like that first season was like still like 63 episodes or something like
Yep.
that. It was a good that first season was a good hot minute. They even had to ask Japan, "Hey, we need more Sentai footage."
Like, send us more, go out in the woods and use it. But that's probably why they moved to New Zealand and started shooting there because Japan didn't have enough for them. But no, like I don't know why they do that now. Like, especially if you have an involved story, why is it like 30 episodes? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. It's like basically by the time the show ends, you feel like you got to know any of the characters, really. You know, I mean, I watch the shows, and I'm just kind of like, am I going to get to really know this person at all? Am I going to come to like this person? And most of the time, yeah, the show's over before I even reach any final feelings about those characters because they still feel new.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like we get more like clarity on the parents. Well, okay, that's actually, you know what? I take that back. In the Power Rangers, I think we did hear about Kimberly's parents. I don't know where Tommy's parents were, or Jason's, or Trini's, or
Well, there was the Parents' Day episode with the Return of the Green Ranger.
I don't remember them seeing their parents. Do
Yeah,
you?
no, they were. Yeah, no, we saw Jason's. I think his dad at least. We saw Trini's parents, Kimberly's mom and dad. Zach's family was there. Billy's family was there. The only parents we didn't see were Tommy's.
Well, I'm convinced Tommy doesn't have any parents because.
Yeah. Well, I mean, actually, that was a very interesting thing that they did in the comic book. They actually said that Tommy was adopted.
I'm pretty certain he was, and I think he was probably going from foster home to foster home during the first MMPR run.
You know,
and they just where he went because he was never home. He was living at Rita's place. So how? No, if he was at Rita's, then why wasn't the cops called or Ebola put out for their missing kid because he was never home and he was underage. So
yeah, and then it also explained why he never met his brother before Zeo.
This is true. This is very true. Yeah, but I mean, back to what you were saying also about relationships with him and Kimberly. Didn't he marry Kat? Isn't he married to Kat in the comics?
In the Power Rangers, was it like Legacy of the Green Ranger or something like that? Or Tommy's like, I can't remember. I have the graphic novel upstairs, yeah, but it's basically, Power Rangers Old Man Logan style. And yeah, he does end up with Kat, which, I found, fairly interesting. And that was actually, again, not to get off topic, a relationship that I wish had been explored a little bit more throughout Power Rangers season 3 in Zeo, because I've always felt like character-wise, Kimberly did them real dirty. Like she Dear John them.
They Dear John them, and then Kat was there to pick up the pieces like that same day. Like, I know you're grieving, but I'm right here. But no, I thought it was interesting that he got with Kat, but then in the middle of that, he was what was it? Not Dino Charge.
Dino Thunder.
Dino Thunder, thank you. Which that's a whole other question. When the heck did he go to school? And now we'll leave that alone. I'm not gonna talk about his career choice in there. That was just really random.
Well, I'm guessing that had to be right after, what was it? After he got done being a ranger after Turbo. That's probably
he never showed any aptitude at all for science whatsoever, and all of a sudden, but that's neither here nor there. For plot purposes, we'll just say that he has that ability. But there was the lady that he was very, very close friends with from school that it kind of looked like he was into a little bit. So where was Kat in the interim of all this? So like, did they lose connection? And then when that season was off, hey, I'm going to marry this chick that I used to go to high school with and be a ranger with and have a kid, which is very strange. So yeah.
It does happen, just questions.
That's what about Power Rangers. Once you start talking about a series, you can't actually just stick on that series. You're going to find other stuff in other series to talk about because of the level of crack. But yeah, so I know we've been talking about this for over an hour. And there's a lot of differences there were a few differences, more similarities in these shows. Is there anything else about Power Rangers, Samurai versus Samurai Shinkenger that you noticed or want to call out?
Let me think. I wish the acting was better. I don't know. I don't know what it was with the Neo Saban era. They, especially during that time, even during calls when they were casting Power Rangers, they're like, hey, can you do a flip? We don't care if you can act. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. Like when it came to a lot of the characterizations and stuff like that, a lot of the acting was really stiff. Especially like Jaden, he was just so wooden. Whereas with Takaru and the other Shikangers, yeah, no, the acting was just so much better, and you could actually relate to them. And yeah, I just wish the acting was better. I wish they had actually gotten some actors. Like that was one of the things at least Disney had was they had some pretty decent actors come on that show. Because they've getting
other things,
a lot of them from like New Zealand and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
So it was always interesting, just to see the jump, or I should say the lowering in the quality of the acting.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I know that on some of the shows that they had, back with RPM and all them, a lot of those actors that were from New Zealand were from, I think they were from soap operas, like in New Zealand.
Yeah, they got some.
Funny. Yeah, and they couldn't watch Power Rangers because it was, even though they filmed it over there, they couldn't watch it. It was against the law for them to air Power Rangers in New Zealand. So like they were not even, like people were like, what's your favorite episode? They're like, well, we haven't seen it yet because we don't get to see it legally in our own country. So yeah. But I don't know. I think that everybody in Samurai was a newcomer, which I don't want to say that is an excuse, because there have been plenty of times that series have brand new actors and they really, you can't tell that they're amateur. So I don't know what it was. I guess you're probably right. They probably were like, well, let's see. Can you hold this sword? How did you do in combat training? Oh, you're good at stage fighting? You don't need to learn to act. We just can tell you to memorize your lines and move on. We'll do multiple shoots. Because there are times when it looks like they're reading lines. It's actually very painful.
It definitely, it hurts me to my core. It'd be like this is where we're at, and also like because of the lowered episode count and the way it was done, the pacing is really awful in Samurai. Like I don't know how they even, like, it does not feel like coherent storytelling on any level whatsoever. Especially since growing up, we've had so many amazing seasons. I mean, if you try watching Samurai after watching, let's say, Space and Time Force back to back, it's hard. It's hard. Rough. Like I remember when Power Ranger Samurai first aired, I had to rewatch it a couple of times. Like I had to almost force myself to get through each episode because I was just like, oh god, this just hurts me to my core, man. It's like, what are they doing here? It's just so nonsensical. And then of course there's episode skips from what they had to skip certain plot points, like in Shinkenger and stuff, just to meet the 10 episode quota before that really long hiatus that they would like to take now. Yeah.
I think a lot of stuff got eliminated. I mean, well, it's hard to do all of it because they had to cut out a lot of the traditional Japanese, cultural things that they had in Shinkenger. There's so much stuff that there's no way they could explain that. No, not that they were trying to explain why they were samurais anyway, but they just couldn't bring that over. It's just more content. It was just like, why is this, the Day of the Dead for you? And like, why? Oh, this is a samurai tradition. We do this all the time in Japan. But how are you Japanese? I'm like, I'm confused right now. And does this Day of the Dead conflict with, your other country's Day of the Dead? Those of you who are of Hispanic descent or Latino descent, how does that work?
Yeah. I don't know. I'd also like to know which New Year's they celebrate.
Yeah, seriously. Do they use power symbols like on the banners? Yeah. It's just so interesting. But yeah. So yeah, I think we have successfully compared and contrasted these two shows. I think that we definitely need to pick another show and potentially do a little broader of our live stream next time, because I know that there's a lot about Power Rangers we could probably talk about. Yeah, a lot. I'm talking like multiple outlines. But yeah, if you guys have not checked out Joe's Geek Show, please do. I always put links to my friends' YouTube channels at the bottom in my description, so I will make no exception today. And if you have not signed up for jury duty. Hit the subscribe button. If you want to know who's next in the nerd bell, it's the notification bell. Until next time, guys, thank you for approaching the nerd. Bye-bye.
Bye.